Hello, Marijo. Welcome to the Cosmic Heartist podcast. I am super, super excited to have you today. We've talked in like little glimpses. I mean, we've done Instagram chats, we've done some voice notes, we did one brief call, but I love the energy that you bring, even through your messages. I love looking at your Instagram and the way you show up. So I am just so excited to have this conversation with you. To begin, I would love if you could introduce yourself and tell us some of your favorite things in the world.
Sure. I am so excited. Thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast. So, my name is Marijo Vollmar, and I live in Oregon, which is on the west coast of the United States. And I have to laugh because how you and I know each other is because of our poetry group. And as much as I like to think of us being peers, I know that in some circumstances I could actually be the mother of many of you because I am a 54-year-old woman, a mother of four, been married for decades, and I am somebody who kind of stepped into my own, meaning that I had a corporate job as a physical therapist for years and years. And about 3 years ago, I went ahead and opened up a wellness center because that was more in keeping with the way that I view my world rather than somebody telling me what to do. I am the captain of my own ship.
What was your inspiration behind opening your wellness center?
Well, that's a little bit of a story. So, what ended up happening was that I was working as an outpatient physical therapist, which is a great job, very fulfilling and very meaningful. And yet, somewhere in there, I realized that healing is holistic, WHOLE, like the whole person. And I was finding that in a hospital setting, which is where I was, it was very clinical. It's like we're only going to look at a shoulder or only a knee or something like that. And with the emphasis being on injury or pain. And I understood that some of my repeat people had something more than just an injured body part. There was an energetic or an emotional component to it. And again, I'm not in that business. Um, and yet I wanted to normalize that healing is really a spectrum and it's the whole person, spiritual, energetic, physical, you name it. And so I had my own healthcare crisis. So, pardon, this is just a little bit of a story where I was really out. I had an allergic reaction to a medication that gave me liver damage. And because I already knew about all those modalities, and I'll tell you what they are in a minute, I was telling my husband, we need a place that just normalizes other forms of healing besides what you would get in a hospital. And from there, we went ahead and got a building and then built a community. And here we are.
What are the modalities that you were talking about?
Yeah, so that's a fun one. So again, I had liver damage, and the doctor basically said, "Hey, your liver is this cool organ that can regenerate itself, and so therefore just like sit at home and just wait, rest and all this kind of stuff." And I was like, "I don't think so." And so right off the bat, there's a modality called craniosacral therapy. And it is one way to go ahead and, among other things, I mean, there's so many utilizations for it, but um, how I was using it was to help me regulate my nervous system because I had a nervous system that was completely in shock and didn't know up from down. And so that was how we started with the therapy there. And in fact, the massage therapist that I had gone to at that time is actually one of my colleagues at the Wellness Center now. And another thing was nutrition. It was basically understanding that the body can heal itself if we know what is nourishing versus not so nourishing. And so I had gone ahead and used that knowledge in my community to go ahead and heal with food. And then the other thing was, believe it or not, energy. So I used like a lot of solfeggio tones. So there was like a lot of like listening to music at different frequencies, as well as sound bowls and tuning forks and things like that, which for a lot of people think that's like really weird. How can you do that? And just at a very pedestrian level, I tell people another way to calm your nervous system. And that seems to be something that a lot of people who may think that's a little bit woo-woo, they can understand that. So yeah, so those were the big ones that I used.
Mm. Okay, so you ended with energy, and I'm looking at this device that I have in front of me that I'm not using as much as I want to. But have you heard of Healy?
I have.
I feel like for people that don't believe in energy and don't believe energy is real, this is such a fun tool to play with because seeing the way the Healy connects to my phone and gives me like tangible ideas of this is your aura, these are the numbers, this is what's living inside of you. I've become like so much deeper a believer of energy and the way that it plays out because through a energy device, like believe like if you want to believe in it or not, if you want to use it or not, just like this little thing is what made me be like, okay, wait, but just this being clipped onto me can tell me that these are the beliefs that I'm holding on to. And the most interesting part is it's beliefs that I'm actually holding on to. So I think it's so crazy. And this is just taking it a step deeper. I think it's so crazy that we are in a place in the world where energy is finally getting the recognition that it needs to get because nothing would exist without energy.
Exactly. Well, it's really funny because with the type of craniosacral therapy that is the modality that I used, I'm actually trained in it as well. And so my colleague is somebody who studied under the same school that I did, and so it's biomechanical, meaning that like if I had to talk to a doctor, I could say, "Hey, there's cerebral spinal fluid, there's this, that, and the other thing." And yet, there's everything, like you said, like everything is energy, right? And so
Yeah.
there are craniosacral therapists out there who are biodynamic, who do use the energetic fields. And so
Mm.
when people are like, well, what are you talking about? This is like energy is so
This
weird. I'm
is
like,
woo
I
woo.
know. And I'm like, okay, so if your heart stopped, right? Like if your heart were like wackadoodle, what are you going to do? And I'm going to go to the emergency room. And I'm like, okay, so what are they going to do? And they're going to use that defibrillator thing on me. And I said, yeah. I said, do you know that's electrical? Do you know that electrical is energy? And so people are like, oh, I'm like, yeah. So if we don't have this, yes, I mean this chemical too, but if we don't have this electrical organ called your heart to pump your blood to so that you can exist in the world, I mean, tell me that there's not energy. And people are like, okay, that's a little bit something people can sink their teeth in. And then as I feel like a lot of people who start to venture in from kind of like a very traditional Western medicine model. And then they're thinking, okay, like I went through the system and that didn't work. And sometimes it takes a little bit of a crisis for people to look at the other modalities that are out there. Energy
Mhm.
is so easy to access. As you know, the Healy's a great device. It really is.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about the heart being like the biggest energetic sensor. And I wonder what you have to say about the energy that we put out being the energy that we receive because the heart is an energetic sensor. And I don't know, why are we not taught this in school?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I can tell you this. I feel like my stories are long. So if that's okay.
Long stories are perfect.
So, I remember during, the initial stages of the pandemic, right? When we're all kind of like getting new hobbies and that kind of thing. I had an opportunity to do a personal development workshop, right?
Mhm.
And I remember going, oh my gosh, like one of the very first tenets that I kind of like grabbed onto was like you're 100% responsible for your life. And nobody had actually said, hey, you are, no matter what happens to you, you can always control how you respond to it, right? And for whatever reason, I had been walking around for decades as an adult. Nobody had actually said, hey, you are responsible to how, because life just happens, right? However, you are responsible for how you react to that. And I kind of went, oh my gosh, right? And from there, I just started studying different things. And that was when I kind of came to the conclusion that I was very cerebral. Everything was like I was thinking, 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 thinking. And the mind is a funny thing because a lot of times, like for example, a scary movie, your body doesn't know energetically, chemically, if it's reality or if it's fake, right? And so I realized I was so much in my head that I was making up stories about things that weren't even like true. Okay. And so when we go back to the heart being a center, I realized I was so much in my head. And if we talk about energy centers, I was like this big blob of like big headedness. And then everything else was like really small. And so I was like, okay, so if we have energy centers, what's this heart chakra doing? And I was like, it's not, because it was so protected. And
Mm.
so through various, ways, I learned to open up this heart chakra. And now I this is how I process the world. I process here before I'm going to process here, because I feel like this sensor that you talk about, this is where the truth lives. And so this is really a new thing for someone's been on planet for like 5 decades for me to operate being a heart center person versus somebody who is always up in my head.
Yeah. And just thinking about how when the heart is like the heart is a magnet, right? It's a magnetic field is what it is. And when it's protected and when things happen and when we go through pain and when we get hurt, we start like building these walls in front of our heart. And all of a sudden we're not able to magnetize anything we want anymore, and we're over logicalizing it and we're thinking, why can't I have that? And like you said, like we're just up here. And what it's taking me back to, I don't know if you ever got to watch this show, the Fairly Odd Parents. I think it's called
Oh,
The Fairly
wow.
Odd Parents. But it used to be on Nickelodeon, and just the heads of the characters were so big and the bodies were so small, and that's what it just brought into my head. Anyway, so when we go through hurt and close this heart center, I think we close ourselves out to opportunities, and we don't know why things are not playing out. And then once we realize through one way or the other, because eventually we realize, eventually we're like, oh my God, this heart, it's doing more things than we're told that it's doing, like I feel like this is a little bit of a side note, but I feel like even heart attacks are so closely related to how much you are protecting and barriering your heart, because I feel like if it feels like it needs to close so much, that's when it's like, hey, I'm here, listen to me, as compared to slowly opening it by our own selves and then actually being able to magnetize the things that we want. What we call manifestation, I feel like, is just opening our heart and making sure our heart is working with our mind. And when they're both coherent, we're more able to get what we want. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks so much about this.
It's so interesting because when I decided to go from like a formal hospital setting to the wellness center, I knew I didn't want to recreate physical therapy here because, again, I wanted to do something that was more holistic, WHOL, like the whole person, right? And so I went back and got some certifications, and one of them being yoga training. Okay. And because, again, I had this head thing going on. um, I took physical therapy based yoga. Lit method is what it's called. So shout out to Laura Hyman, who's my instructor. Um, and it was so cool because it's traditional vinyasa yoga, and yet we talk about posture. So I promise you, this goes with the heart. I promise you. So we talk about posture, right? And when she was talking about posture, she was also talking about balancing the chakras, right? Balancing the energy centers. And that's why posture, we think about posture like, how do I present myself to the world? How do I hold my spine so that I'm not going to injure myself and things like that? And yet, if we think about posture as a way to balance the energy centers, if we think about our modern world where, if we're all in our phones or we're, working on, whatever on our computer, we're closing our heart chakra because the work is in front of us. And so everything is down and everything is compressed. And so it was really kind of revolutionary for me, for somebody who had been working in a medical field that, emphasized posture, right? To actually think about balancing the energy centers, just getting strong in how you stand. And so when I teach yoga now, it's not just like, hey, we're doing this for good posture. We're like doing this because we want to open our heart chakra, because we spend so much of our time in our daily lives, compressing it and not even knowing it.
This is making me think of my dad because towards the end of his life, there was so much time that he was on his phone because he was like really big into his business and he really cared so much about his business. I feel like it was his one true love. So he was, and especially during the pandemic, it was what was keeping him going. And he was like this a lot, which eventually made his shoulders kind of droop. And so every time we would be walking around and out, I'd be like, Papa, open your shoulders because like, if you're walking around like this, it's natural that something is not right. And then when something does go wrong, it's natural that you're not really able to recover from it because you're already kind of in this state. So I feel like just the beauty of talking about this is the ability to take preventative measures before it's too late. And I mean, if this was 6 months ago before I lost my dad, I would be like, "Ah, there is no such thing as too late." But now I feel like, no, there is such a thing as too late. So we really gotta like these bodies, they're great things. And I know you talk about being pro-aging, and I would love to hear what that entails. And yeah, what does that entail?
Well, it's funny because the pandemic was really a big reset for me, and I think for a lot of people because we had a lot of time on our hands.
Mhm.
If you had met me prior to the pandemic, and it's really kind of funny because I pull pictures every now and then, and there's like, pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic. It gave me an opportunity to kinda, like, look at my life and how I was, managing, like, a lot of things, and
Mm.
during the pandemic, I turned 50. I literally turned 50, and I was looking forward to it because I was, like, gonna have a big party and all this kinda stuff, and instead, we are all, away from each other, and so, instead, I was like, "Okay, we're 50, what does that actually mean?"
Mm.
And again, I was telling you I was taking some, like, personal development classes and just kind of looking at different things, and then it's like, okay, if we are taking radical responsibility for our life, what does that mean to be 50? And, again, a very busy lifestyle. I had a full-time job. I have 4 children. One of them has severe autism. My other 3 children at the time were very involved actors, and so they were traveling for their work. I have a daughter who's a singer, so lots of travel for their work. So it was like go, 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 go. And, then, like, the reset button, like, with the pandemic, right? And so, as I was looking at, like, what my 50s were going to look like, I was like, "If I keep living the way that I was when I was 40," which was always like, "What does everybody else expect from me?" Right? "What does my
Mhm.
job expect from me? What does, my family expect from me? What does society, expect from me?" Externally, I was a very successful person, and yet in those trainings that I was talking about, those personal development trainings, there was a question in there. It was like, "Who are you?" And I had a very difficult time answering that question without defining myself as being a role for like another person, whether it was, my employer or my husband or, my children or my friends. I was always somebody else's something. Yeah. And that was a really big wake up call because I realized I was just kind of walking around like a programmed robot. And I was like, "Who are you, Mary Jo? Like, who are you?" And so when I thought about and hopefully, God willing, average age is 79 and maybe I get that many years more or maybe I don't. I'm like, what do I want the rest of this ride? Because I will tell you, and I know because you are a poet like I am, a lot of my writing lately is about mortality. My father just passed, like 8 weeks ago. And so a lot of my writing's been about mortality. And I'm thinking, do I want to be in autopilot like I was for my 40s? And yeah, it looked really successful out externally. And yet, when someone's like, "Who are you?" I couldn't answer that question. And so I decided I'm going to get on this pro aging thing because there is this. I don't know if it's a program or what, but there's this idea that worthiness and vitality is only for the young, right? So beauty is for the young, new things are for the young, strength is for the young. And I'm like, that's a narrative, right? And so it's like, okay, let's be, now that we know, because we're asking the questions, right? Like, who are you? And if I don't know because I'm starting at baseline, let's just create a character. Why not, right? Yeah, and so began the journey of like me asking me who I am. And believe it or not, I know it's very vogue to say inner child, but I will tell you, revisiting that 6-year-old version before the world got a hold of me really pointed out to the things I truly loved. And so starting there, then I met like the inner child, and from there I met the inner teenager, and so on and so forth. And I will tell you, it is a story that continues to be written this day. I will tell you though, pro aging, and it'll be fun because you and I hope we're friends for a really long time. When you're in your 50s, I would love to hear. You go, yeah, I'm leading the charge because life does not end. Life does not end as the gray hair set in and the body doesn't look like it used to. um, in fact, if anything, it sort of just gives you a permission slip for more, 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 because I see the exit door. I really do. And come what may, I'm gonna go kicking and screaming and asking to come back. Um, yeah, so that's why I'm so all about women going, it's not over. It's not over. You can reinvent yourself, whatever age you are.
Okay, there is so much I want to dip into there because there's just so much there. The first thing is, what a crazy narrative, isn't it? That as you grow older, you lose your charm, you lose your beauty. I don't think that's true at all. You're so beautiful and you're so charming, and you are lighting up the world just with your face
Oh,
and
you're
your heart. But what that is, bringing me back to is, so in the Indian culture, for example, girls are told to get married early before we're 30 because by the time you're 30, your beauty starts diminishing. Who will want to marry you then? This was the old narrative that was going on. And, even though it's not the same narrative, not the exact same narrative that's being told, so many women that are in their early 30s. So many Indian women that are in their early 30s now are questioning themselves because they're not married. Because I feel like because of this beginning thing that as you grow older, you won't find a guy anymore, which I think is absolutely crazy because I know some really accomplished people who have only become smarter, who have only become more beautiful, who have only become more authentic. And the verbiage that's being said on the outside is you're never going to find someone. Why does it matter if you find someone if you are enhancing and like building your own insides, your own life? Like you're saying, I think when we lose someone so dear to us, the biggest thing just becomes what is our relationship with mortality and what is our relationship with our own mortality and how are we going to present that to the world? Because at the end of the day, as artists, that's what we're doing. We're wearing our heart on our sleeve or in our art, whatever we decide to share. I like to say I wear my heart on my wrist. I have a little heart tattoo on my wrist. um, but I don't know. I think there are so many narratives that just need to die because we can literally create anything and everything in a world that's filled with energy. Like you said, like, why not create a character? And this is your character. And then I also love that part that you said about the who are you. So around the pandemic, or like maybe a year before, is when I started getting into astrology. And so this is to say that no matter the modality you use, the question will always come up, which is, who are you? Because it came to me through astrology. It came to me through studying Aries in my chart. And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. And that's literally what Aries asks. If you remove everything from the world that the world has given you and your body and your mind, if you remove everything, who are you? And it's such a tough question to sit with because then it becomes, okay, I'm Karina. Okay, Who are you, Karina? Okay, I'm a girl. I'm a daughter, right? It's so natural to go to the roles like this is who you are, instead of being like, oh my God, I am this soul that cannot be contained. I am multidimensional. I cannot tell you who I am because I'm so many different things in one. Like, when are we gonna start owning that? And I think now is when we're starting to own that. Now is when more people are starting to own that. But what a beautiful world we're building, pioneered by women like you, to be like, listen, we're us, and we only get bigger with age. And before we started recording, we were talking about how we feel about technology, and you were sharing about how sometimes when technology doesn't work for you, you say it's just your aura cutting into the technology. And I think that's so true. Like, our minds are the most advanced technology that exists. When I was just waking up, like, that's what I was thinking about, how this is a machine in itself. And how did it go? One of these thoughts that I had was like, imagine when we make a decision based on our mind, right? It goes from here and then it goes out. But imagine if we make a decision based on our gut. Then it starts with the gut, it goes up to the solar plexus, see how does it feel there, goes up to the heart, checks in on the resonance there, goes to the throat, and then comes out. And then actually maybe goes up to the head and then comes out. But it's just such a different process of from here to here versus from here all the way up to here. When you put it that way, it's like nothing is woo woo. If we look at the body, we're literally seeing what we need to understand.
You know, there's a lot in there. I'm gonna tell you right now. There was I had so many thoughts as you were talking, and I do want to say this because again, in our poetry group, and I was talking about this, I could be like everybody's mom, right? I see you all as my peers, and yet, and some level, I could see everybody's mom, or I could be everybody's mom. I want to tell you, um, so I have friends who are indigenous to North America, right? And a lot of their talk, because they're elders, is like, oh, we're thinking about, the world that we're going to leave for, 7 generations, ahead of us, and all this kind of stuff. And there, there's concerns, okay? And then I look at them and I go, and yet the young women that I see, the women that I see in my world, because my oldest daughter is 20, right? My youngest is 10, but my oldest daughter is 20. Then I have friends, from 20 to 70, right? And when I'm thinking of the young women, the women who are in their 20s and their 30s, you are all embracing your inner wisdom and knowing that whatever is coming from the external is the external. Where the way that I was raised as a kid, like in the 70s and 80s, it was always like, how are you going to, fit into this world of like other? And all those movies of like you complete me, or I need to, yeah, have this type of job, and this type of house to be successful. I remember waking up when I was 36 and like I had it all, the cars in the garage, the house, the kids, the husband, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, this is it? This is the top of the mountain? I'm like, no, this can't be all that life is about. And so that was part of like kind of like the sort of beginning of my consciousness that there was something more to this life than the material things. And yet I look at like my daughter and you and other young women who are just like, everything I have is already in me. And I know you know that because I see it in your art. You teach this to other women with all of your modalities that you have. And so when I think of my friends who are elders, I'm like, the future is good because first, the future's female. Okay. We are the creators. And then when we have these women leading the charge with these open hearts and these open minds, I see nothing but like evolution for, the greater good of humanity. And maybe I'm living in Delulu because I know in the United States, we just had an election and a lot of people are afraid. And I'm not in any way discounting that because Everybody has their unique story and their unique magic that maybe the louder voices may or may not understand. And yet there's a revolution of people who are like, no more, we're going to shine bright because we know who we are, and we came to this earth with the knowledge of like how to just be better humans. So that kind of went all over the place. The point being that I'm really excited because of the way that the young people that are younger than me are navigating the world.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there's a lot of fear everywhere. I think whether we say that we're afraid or not, I think we're all holding on to some sort of fear. Yesterday I was talking to my mom and telling her I don't know what kids are going to be like by the time I have kids, because kids are changing so much. Okay, I witness my my nieces and my nephew, and I see the way they talk, and I see how quickly they're growing, and I see how their vocabulary is like increasing. My niece is 6, and yesterday she goes, "Why are you so interested in the caterpillar?" And then I pointed out something about a flower. "Why are you so interested in the flower?" Like, I don't think I was saying that at 6. I was not asking why someone's so interested in a flower. But just the way their brains work and the way it's next level, and it's scary because it's next level, because it's something we haven't seen before. But instead of being scared, maybe we can flip the energy into excitement. Can we maybe be excited about the potential? Because if we're the parents, then we know how we're going to raise kids, and we know that kids follow what their parents do. And I'm sure you can attest to this as being a mom of 4. And also, I just want to like celebrate you for the way you're living and the way you're being and the way you're sharing and being a mama for, and just giving your heart to the world. I think it is so precious. So thank you. I am honoring you for that, and for all that you do, and for all the love that you have to give, because I'm telling you, even with just like one message of yours, even with your hugs message, I feel your hugs.
Karina, I have to tell you, it's funny because I'm the middle child of 5. And because of being Filipino, we had the extended family. So I had, grandparents living with us, or say an aunt and uncle came over, and they would be in the house for a while until they, landed their own place. So I had the benefit of just being around a lot of people. And yet, because I babysat, let's just be real, younger siblings, I always said I'm never having children, right? Okay. And so when I had my first child, I was like, this is pretty great. And then subsequently had more. Um, there was one rule that I had with my husband. I said, they came from God. They came directly from the creator. So they are perfect. Even my son with all the disabilities, okay? That child is absolute perfection, right? I said, it is our job to not screw them up. It is our job that whatever is here, that we, shape them to be responsible human beings, and yet we do not dim their light, because the benefit of having a larger family is that you get to see that these are individual human beings. I mean, my kids, they kind of all look alike, and yet when you get to see them one on one, you get to see that they're absolutely a different flavor of humans in the best way. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love them because they're my kids, and yet I'm also really proud of me and my husband, because I really do see their individuality, because we were really determined to go, hey, you're going to be whoever you're going to be. Now my kids may disagree with that. I don't know, but but I'd like to think, that they feel that they've been empowered to be as authentic as they are, and still be really responsible human beings. So yeah, it's a funny thing to be a parent, because it's a big responsibility, just knowing that this is somebody, like I said, that you got from God, and like, how do you make sure that level of, I guess, yeah, the best word is holiness, the holiness of themselves is still maintained.
Yeah. Okay, so something that takes me to is a podcast episode that I had with Kim Marie. when Kimmery was saying that when she had her baby, was going around and asking people, when did your child stop being perfect? And then she started asking, if this child is perfect and if this child never stopped being perfect, when did I stop being perfect? So if you haven't, like, if anybody's listening to this and hasn't listened to the episode with Kimmery, go back and listen to Kimmery's episode. She's another woman from Poems and Power. I have so many women from Poems and Power right now on my episodes, and these are some of the highest caliber women. So if you're not listening, please go listen, because they're gonna like expand your heart space so much.
Kimmery, oh my gosh. I'm telling you, she's one of my favorite humans. She really is somebody who says it like it is. And that really is a very brave thing to do. And I love that as you are a, way shower, a light, for all of us to remember that our truth is the truth and to say it loud. So thank you for, all that you do.
Thank you for all that you do. And I want to ask you, do you know your sun, moon, and rising? I wanted
Oh,
to ask
yeah,
you earlier, but I keep
I do.
forgetting.
I do. So I am a Taurus sun and I am a Pisces moon and I am a Aries rising. And I will tell you right now, my friend, so she just came back from the Hawaiian Islands and she gave me these kukui nuts. And she told me that first of all, they originate in the Philippines. She was just very clear about that. And also she goes in the Hawaiian tradition, it's a symbol for fire. And I was like, how like and again, I know you probably experienced this, Karina, when you're close to people, we kind of just know what the other person's thinking, right? And feeling and
Mhm,
things like that. And I said,
mhm.
what a perfect day to give me this because I actually wrote a poem. I woke up in the middle of the night and wrote a poem. My Aries rising wrote a poem about fire. So I love that.
Magic.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like how this conversation is going.
Yeah, oof, that's so magic. And okay, I see you with your Taurus, Pisces, and Aries. And of course, you are like a leading voice in pro aging, at least for me. But of course, you are, because Aries are like trailblazers and are the way showers. And it's the first sign of the zodiac. And it's the first place that we see inspiration and fire and empowerment and light. And so the fact that you are like embodying all of this and lighting all our fires in one way or the other, and like just looking at your posts, and I love your posts because they're short and sweet, but they ask such hard hitting questions, which on the surface they may not be hard hitting if you're just watching it and watching it to watch, but if you're watching it and listening to listen, then it's like, oh wait, because it's so simple. But I think that's the thing about spirit and soul and all of this work. It actually is so simple. It is us and our minds that decide to just complicate everything. But when we go back to it, the instruction is so simple, always.
So I have to tell you a funny story about my Instagram.
Yes.
So I had a friend recently. She's just like, so you go on there and you say like a little ditty and then you go about your day. She goes, how long does it take for you to plan that? And I'm like, I just turn on the camera and whatever I say just comes out of my mouth. I really honestly have no idea what I'm going to say until I say it. And so, as we were talking about the heart before, um, I remember being a little girl and feeling things and going, no, 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 that's nothing, right? And then because of just the way I was raised in society and all that kind of stuff, it's just like, shh, we don't talk about that, or just don't because that's not of God, that comes from like a dark place or whatever. And I know better now. Those are again just narratives that for whatever reason, I was told. And so it's really kind of funny because whatever messages that I give on my Instagram account, I really don't know what it's going to be until, Spirit says, open your mouth, Mary Jo, and this is the word of the day. So thank you for listening. And yeah, because my friend was like, what do you do? And I'm like, I do nothing. I open my mouth. That's all that happens.
I think something I've been sharing about in multiple podcast episodes here now is it's really just about creating the space. You create the space, you turn on the medium, and you put it here. And when it's here, you're like your soul again just knows. And I think at the end of the day, we are all able to do that. We are all able to create. We are all able to do whatever we want as long as we create the space to do it, because we're so busy. Like, we're so busy, and there is no space to be able to create, which is why we're admiring people who are creating things, and we're being like, for me, why can't I create that? Well, I just have to be a corporate girly. Nothing wrong with being a corporate girly, but also, like, you're so capable of creation.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting because I have two thoughts with that. Okay. Because I was a corporate girly,
Yes.
I was
And
punching
so
in.
was I.
Yeah. And it would be nothing to work a 12-hour day and then go home and then do whatever I was doing as a mom and then do it again the next day and then next thing you know, 4 years has gone by and you're just like, what happened? Right. Um, and so number one, I always tell people this: time is a construct, right? If you really want to do something, you can make the space. It's just, it's just you decide, right? And the other one, and I swear I said this like 12 times last week, so might as well just bring it up again. Um, if we are energetic beings who somehow got dropped into a meat and bone suit that still somehow manages to stay on a planet that spins round and round and we don't get thrown off. And somehow we only get 79 years on this planet. Why are you not running towards like every like joyful experience? Like it's like, again, I can see the exit door, right? I'm going to be 55 next year. And I'm just like going 55, 79 minus 55. Oh my gosh. I'm like, more, like literally, it's like, how much can I drink? How much can I eat? And I mean, energetically, right? Like, how much can I do? How much can I love? How much can I experience? And part of me is like, wow, how many years was I asleep? And no judgment on that because I was just sleeping, right?
Mhm.
And now that I'm awake, it's just like, let's go. Let's go, 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 go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. Yes to all of that. Because, okay, so something I do is in my poems, whenever I write how many years we have to live, I always write something like something, we only have 100 years anyway. And you saying 79 is making me think, what if you start casting spells to turn it into 100? Because I'm casting spells through my poems for it to be 100. So please stay alive for 100 years because your magic is so freaking amazing.
I love that. I love that. But it really, okay, can we just talk about the power of words for just a moment?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Really quick, because I have so many stories that could be very long. My undergraduate was actually in journalism. So I was actually a
Ooh.
yeah, so I was actually a news reporter. And it was a good job, and yet it wasn't who I was, right? Um, I was always a writer. I was a writer as a little kid. I have like thousands of journals. And then I wrote professionally, got out of that business, and then did no creative writing. None. No creative running. I mean, like nothing, 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 nothing. And then I, Chelsea Diane, I have no idea, somehow got in my psyche, right? And I'm like, this is a very dynamic soul, right? If you've had ever any experience with Chelsea, she kind of just, excuse me, she just like pops, she's like boom, right? So I started following her and then joined Poems and Power. And I remember the very first writing prompt. Um, and this is kind of part of my journalism training is like if someone says you have to write something, you need copy like straight. Like you just got to
Mm.
spit out whatever you have, right? And so she's like, we're gonna write a poem and go. And then I wrote my first poem ever, okay, ever. And I went after class, I read it and I'm like, I had no idea I could write poetry, right? And so from there, it's been so healing to be a creator. is so healing to be a creator because you can just, you know, spell cast. You really can. I mean, words are, it starts here, right? And here. And then it becomes a thing when it's even here. And then when you write it out, it becomes another thing. And then when you speak your words, it becomes another thing. And then creator's like, oh, I heard you. And so then it just shows up. And so I have this game now because when I was a corporate girly, sometimes I wake up and I was like, I don't want to wake up today, like put the covers over my head because I just don't want to do the automated, rinse and repeat kind of day, right? I actually wake up now and I'm going, I wonder how much magic I'm going to see today. Not if there's going to be magic. It's like, how much magic am I going to see? Because I know it. I know it because of me knowing people like you and me knowing people like me and knowing that the world is magic because it really is. It really is.
Well, and because your heart is magic and your heart is magnetizing magic, right? And just a remembrance to everyone again listening to this, if you're not seeing magic in your life, I think it's a question of how can you embody magic more? And the more you embody magic, the more you attract magic. And magic is not like it doesn't have to be so far out of reach. Magic can be you thinking about a friend and a friend messaging you to check in. Magic could be you writing a poem about fire and a friend gifting you this necklace that symbolizes fire. Magic could be um, looking outside and seeing a bird fly by and then creating meaning out of that bird. I feel like magic is just giving meaning to the beautiful things that are happening around us because beautiful things are always happening around us. And when we go back to that inner child version of ourselves, everything is magic. And then, okay, so I love that you brought up inner child and inner teen because that's something that gets skipped right by. And I did an embodiment coaching training last year. And this is what we did. For the first part, we worked on our inner child. Second part, we worked on our inner teen. Third part, we worked on our higher self. Um, so working and just hearing that there is inner teen work to be done. Oh my God, that's revolutionary because we're children, right? And everyone is now talking about inner child work, and we need to talk more about inner teen work. But our inner child, right, appreciates magic and beauty and the simpleness of life and the simpleness of the world. And then we become teenagers, and then we realize, wait, life sometimes sucks, and we maybe want to be emo, and we maybe don't want to talk to anybody, and we want to listen to all the rock music in the world.
Yeah.
Um, and then we become adults, and that inner child just like slips away. And that inner teen is what left the biggest flavor because that's the last that we were. And then we just end up growing. And what we don't realize a lot of time is I think there's a lot of resentment from our inner teen world and our teen years because I mean, I don't even need to explain why. We've all been teenagers. We all know what it feels like to be a teenager and feel misunderstood and unheard. And even though we were probably heard the best that people could hear us, we we felt unheard. And there was nothing wrong with that. But all of this to say, I think it's so important to do inner teen work and come back and look at what are these beliefs that you started holding when you were a teen and remove. Like just start shedding those because maybe once we start shedding those, we can go back to see our inner child and it will be that much easier to spot and attract magic in our lives.
Yeah. The inner teen thing is really interesting because I have a 22-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And what I have observed with these children is that childhood, I know it's not this for everybody. And yet I'd like to think that there is, the happy times, the innocence, the everything is, rainbows and unicorns, right? And then something about at least American culture is that the clock ticks over and these children, literally children, are 13 or 12 or whatever people decide they're going to be teenagers, and then people look at them differently because they look different. I mean, you have this kid who's maybe like 4'11" is now like 13, and they're, like 5 foot, 11 now. They grew a foot over the summer or something. And they're like, okay, so now we have this adult looking person, but last year they were a child. And now we're expecting them to be like more grown up because they just look different. And then it's such a weird you know, I don't know even what the right words, but it's just a weird thing because it's literally a bigger body, but this child who's dropped into this bigger body and all the expectations that come with that. So I keep trying to remind my children, I know you got a bigger body, but I know that you've never been in this space, emotionally and things like that. So even though people, because I got a 14-year-old who's 5'11", and people like think he's 16 or 17. And I'm like, he's only 14. So please, I know he's a really responsible young man. Do not put pressures on him like you would for an older teenager because he doesn't have that kind of experience. So yeah, there's a lot to sort out from our teenage years. And so I love that this part of your work, that you don't skip that part of the human, because like you said, we're multidimensional. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, something I want to go back really quickly into because I skipped through it. And thank you for giving us your insight based on being a teen mom. I think it's so cool to not just talk about our teen years, but to also have that physical, tangible children who are literally in their teen years now that maybe reflect to you who you were in your teen years in some way or the other because they are your kids. And
Right.
maybe, it's much more in your face. I feel like as women, maybe for men as well, but as women, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I don't have kids yet, but this is just my view of it is we get so in our lives into everything, and then we have kids, and then we're forced to look at our inner child because they're mirrors right in front of us. It's like this kid is doing this. Did I used to do that when I was a kid? And then they turn into teenagers, and then again, they're mirrors of us as teenagers. And so I think whether or not we decide to um like consciously go back and look at our inner teen and look at our inner child when we have kids, I think we're left with no choice but to actually do it because they're there.
Right. Well, it's really kind of funny because I remember my mom and dad saying like, "Okay, you have to do this," and I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Because," that kind of thing. And my parents are great. I mean, they're very lovely people and all this kind of stuff. And yet they're working off the playbook that their parents gave them, right? And then same thing with me when I was in a new mom. And this is the one thing that I tell new mothers. I said, you have a baby there. You're a baby mom. Like you don't know any more than this kid knows about momming. This kid only knows this much about being a human. You only know this much about being a mom, right? And so the thing is that what I found is that like in my early years, and I apologize to my older kids a lot. And I'm like, I was working off the only playbook that I had, and that was my parents' parenting style. I mean, because they're lovely people, and I'd like to think that I'm a nice human. So I'm like, okay, this sort of works. And yet, as I stepped into being a parent, and then, now I have bigger kids, and then I have babies again, I'm like, okay, what didn't work so well there, I can tweak the playbook, so to speak. And so now I have my older daughter who has observing me parenting her sister who's 10 years younger than her. And she's like, Mom, I would never got away with that. I said, no better, do better, no better, better, because you just learn as you go. And when I actually think about kind of like the biggest change that I made as a parent, when I, again, having multiple children gave me opportunities to, again, know better, do better, is that I would look at a child and go, how would I would have been, no, how would little Mary Jo have been in the same situation? And rather than like parent the behavior or the situation, I would be like, okay, why would the little version of me have been freaking out? You know what I mean? Or whatever. And then I'm talking to my child, like almost like peer to peer. Does that make sense? And then it was like, oh, oh, and like, I could go back, and yet, again, I was just learning. And so if I get the opportunity to talk to a new mom, I'm like, look at your child like your peer. I mean, obviously you're going to be the parent, you know all the safety stuff, but when you're in that part, they're like, why are they doing that? Step back and go, why would Mary Jo as a little one do that? And then you go, oh, a lot. You get a lot of aha moments out of that.
I love that you took it there because I was just gonna say, so if you had advice for a new mom, what would it be? What would it be? Like exactly that. I think it's so cool um to mother based on thinking that your child is a little version of you. And to think from that perspective of why would I have done that when I was little rather than being like, you made a mistake, you're reprimanded, And that was our parents' way. That was an older way of doing things, maybe because they didn't have the brain space, they didn't have the consciousness of like the kind of consciousness that we have now. They didn't maybe have the wisdom, they had their experience. And for the most part, their experience was not ideal in the way that we see ideal today. And so we definitely got to cut them some slack. I think my whole life changed when I stopped expecting my parents to be these perfect people and instead started looking at their parents and the way their parents treated them and the way they were brought up. And then I just got such a new profound appreciation for the way they were actually doing, or the way they are, like the way my mom still is doing the best that she can to her ability, given everything that she went through. Like for example, my mom got married at 17. She lived in India. My dad's family, or my dad and his mom, by then lived here, but they had gone, picked her. She left her whole life, didn't go to college, moved here, and had her first kid at 18, second kid at 19, me at like 32-ish. Um, but she didn't like, and so the way she is today is doing the best under her circumstance, and her best is like, can I offer you something to eat? Like you can't leave the house without eating because I have to take care of you in the form of eating, like it's a mother's care is what it is. It's just like, can I give you anything? I want to give you something. And before I would be like, why can't she be more independent? And now I'm like, she never learned that. And it's okay. And maybe now is the time for her to start stepping into her independence. And it's such a profound journey now, watching someone who was never really very independent lose her husband and have to step into a new version of herself. And the way she's doing it with so much courage, of course, she has her moments of, I didn't know this would happen. I didn't know this was time. But the way she's doing it with so much courage just allows me to, my God, see her, like you said, like peer to peer. Like, yes, she's my mom, but it's so cute. Yesterday, she was hugging me and she was like, you're my daughter, but also you're my mom, and also you're my best friend, and also you're my sister, and now you're also my husband. And I was like, oh my gosh, mom, that's a lot of roles to play, but I'm so happy to be as much as I can for you. And I think that, like, just looking at our parents and our kids as peers, it changes the game completely because then it allows so much more compassion. And rather than, why are you like this? It's like, I see why you're like this. Thank you for doing your best.
Absolutely. And it's so beautiful. That's such a beautiful story, Karina. It really is because with my parents, and again, you know, I'm an immigrant kid. I was born in the Philippines, but we came to America. So there's a whole other cultural thing on top of just
Yes.
growing up, right? And then my parents have passed, and then I look back and I see, what were they doing when they were this age and this age and this age compared to me, because I have enough years under my belt that that we can draw parallels. And I'm
Yes.
sitting there thinking, with the tools that they had available to them, right? Because again, I really truly believe that as humans evolve, we just have more consciousness and more consciousness. I'm like, they did an outstanding job with the tools that they had available. Well, now my brothers and sisters, they may disagree. And yet I really do feel like, yeah, I'm very like, I look at their humanness, I don't look at them as like, hey, here's the cookie cutter mom and dad, like on the television, like you need to be like that. I'm like going, you're human people having a human experience with the tools that you have available to you. And you know what? I tip my hat to that. I really do. Yeah.
And I think doing that just allows us to have so much more compassion for ourselves too. It all bleeds out. Like everything we do for everyone else always bleeds out to ourselves. And I think there's nothing kinder in a world that's so rough. I'm thinking of like the texture. There's nothing kinder in a world that feels like sandpaper than being compassionate to ourselves and just having this flow and this goo rather than like sandpaper.
Yeah. Well, at least for me, um, I remember that everything was always like, "What will other people think?" It was always like appearances and this kind of thing. And it took me until, just a couple of years back to go, "What do I think about it?" And not even it, what do I think about me in it? And when I started navigating my world that way, because I literally grew up on a soup of what will other people think. I think I was fed that every single day, and I'm sure there are many other women who would say
Yep.
the same thing, right?
Yep.
And it's so funny because I'll tell people self-love is not selfish, and they go, I'm like, have you looked at yourself in the mirror, like in your own eyes, and go, I love you? And if you ask people that, people are like, I could never do that, or if they try, they're crying because they've never given themselves that opportunity to just say, like, I'm on my own best friend. I'm on my own, everything I already have is within me because I love me. And it's a big deal. I really feel like how the world is going to heal is if we just accept ourselves first, as is. Everyone's like, I'm going to love myself if I look a certain way, or if I have this degree, or if I stop, biting my nails, or whatever vice they have. Right. And I'm like, no, 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 you're multidimensional. And this is what you got right now. Like in 5 minutes, you might have something completely different. And I really hope you love the right now version, as well as the 5 minutes later version, as well as whoever was back here. Because, like I said, 79 years, or maybe 100. Well, let's change that. Let's spell cast out 100 years on this earth. Like it's such a short, we're carbon dating, things that are 20,000 years old. I mean, a human life is not here for very long. It's like, why do you want to spend it in anything that's less than joy, right?
Yes.
So I guess, like, if I'm thinking about why I came incarnated in this time and place, it's just to go, live your life.
Yes, like a true Aries rising. Live your life fully, completely, just be so fully alive. And okay, so I know we've given a lot of advice over here in some way or the other, but what would you say to someone who is stuck in this? What will other people say? What will they say? What will they think? What would you tell them?
Yeah, again, like I said, I was fed a daily diet of that. And it really is understanding that you are not here for very long. You are not. And this kind of goes with my story about you're an energetic being, and you're not going to be here for very long. That narrative. Truly, truly, truly. And I say this to my kids, and I saw one of them getting a little bit weepy when I was saying this. And I said, listen, I said, when I die, like, me, like, me. So you're gonna miss me, and you're gonna cry, and you're gonna want to call me and all this kind of stuff, right? And then maybe, I'll have grandkids that will remember, grandma, right? But after that, people aren't going to remember me. They won't, they might see a video, or, hear a recording or something like that, but they're not going to know the essence of me. right? So pretty much when I depart from this earth, I got my kids, maybe some grandkids, and then after that, poof. Like who cares? No one's gonna go, remember that time she wore that weird dress with those shoes and fell on her face? No one's gonna remember that in like 100 years. So like why should we care what other people think? Because we're not here for very long and no one's gonna remember that. And PS, the people who are gonna remember that are the people who are too busy looking at not their own lives. They're too busy looking out here, and I really feel like we really need to turn our eyes inward and just go, hey, I love me. I love what I'm doing. I'm loving everything here because, like you said, and continue to say, it magnetizes all those lovely things we want in the world. However, if this is closed and you don't even know what's here, if all it's here is like gobbledygook, that's what you're going to magnetize. And who wants a chance? I don't want chance. I'm not saying I'm a control freak, but I want joy. So I'm gonna look joyfully at what's here now. And so that's what I would say to people who are stuck. It's like find the things in you that you love, even if you have to fake it. Even if you have to fake it, even if you have to make up a character, make it a daily practice that, hey, there's something about me that I love because, like you said, you're going to bring that back to you. And then you'll just have more and more and more. So another thing, it's very closely related, is just gratitude. Because sometimes people I got nothing. I got nothing I like about myself. How about this? You woke up. I woke up, I get to see another day. And for some people, maybe they don't want to see another day, and I hope that's not the case. Yet there's always something. I breathe. I can see that bird over there. I mean, find something, because once you can find something externally, then you can start bringing it in here.
Wow. I love that. That whole thing, I feel like just summarized our entire podcast and everything that we've spoken about in such a beautiful way. You're going to be remembered. You have a book, don't you?
I do have a book, and it's kind of
Tell
funny. I
us
didn't.
about your book.
Well, I didn't plan on having it next to me. I just actually signed it for a friend, and so here it is.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it's called Craving, and it has a picture of a pomegranate on it. And I chose that because I like the story of Persephone because she is the queen of flowers, and I know you are the queen of flowers as well as of the underworld. So I like the idea of people understanding that women are just not these like sweet little things. I mean, we are very complex, multi-dimensional beings. So like Persephone, we can be the queen of flowers, but also the queen of, darkness. And darkness doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? Our shadows do not have to be a bad thing. It just means we're complex. And so I actually, and this is kind of funny, I decided to use a pen name, which is Joe Guzman or Guzman, because you're in the Philippines, right? And that is actually the name I went by as a child. So I decided to use a pen name to kind of honor the inner child who, when asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? I always wanted to be a writer and an author. So that's me meeting that goal.
I love that. You've come full circle. And because you're leaving that book in the world and probably more books in the world, you are going to be remembered. I'm sure of it. After your kids and after their kids and even after their kids, because your work is magic. Would you like to read us a poem?
Oh, actually, can I do this? Can I read the one that I wrote this morning?
Yes.
So this one's not published. Oh, thank you for this platform. I love it. Okay. So the funny part about this is I literally woke up in the middle of the night to write it. So I have come to realize that I stop when the words come. I just stop. My kids know. Sometimes I pull over on the side of the road and I'm just writing. Okay. So this one I woke up in the middle of the night. Okay. Stop flying too close to the sun, they say. Yet I have no fear of the heat. Your quiet disposition shields the fire that smolders within. I've seen flickers of what's beneath the surface. Light, indeed, recognizes light. Know that I am a sanctuary for the fire breathers, because I too am one of you. I see and feel and honor what you've kept secret for so long, the discipline, the mastery to control that kind of force. No wonder you are tired. No more, no more. Unleash the flames. The time is now. The world needs this kind of passion, this kind of intensity. Allow your light to shine bright. You are born to illuminate the darkness. Release the flames to burn down the stagnation. The earth houses a new life in the dirt, a new way that is ready to surface. Your fire is your greatest gift. No need to hide any longer. This time, it is impossible for you to burn. There is no such thing as flying too close to the sun. Life giver, way shower. Don't you know you are the sun too?
Oh my gosh, I am a sanctuary for the fire breathers. Holy moly. I love that poem. It pulls together your sun, moon, and rising, and so good. I feel like your soul knew that I would ask you to read a poem, and so you woke up in the middle of the night, you were like, this is the poem I want to share with the world. Wow. Okay, so for anyone that doesn't know Mary Jo or has never seen her or has never heard her, you now know her just based on that poem because I feel like that completely encapsulates you. And I think, wow, there's just so much power there. So I can't wait for you to share it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. It's so funny because, like, and this is the thing about creation. Like, I didn't know, as you had talked about, I had never given myself the space to create. And so, you had asked me before if I had advice for a new mom. I would definitely say you just created, a life. Keep expanding on that because creation, as you know, is like in the sacral plexus, right? Just keep creating besides your children. There's so many art forms, whether it's song or dance or, the sky's the limit. I mean, you and your flowers, Karina. I mean, there's so much art. I truly believe that's how our souls express ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Isn't there a quote? Uh, my soul breathes in flowers. Who
Oof.
is that? I feel like that's a quote by someone. Okay, I'm gonna search it after. I'm gonna add it in the podcast description when I find it because it is not my quote, but I feel like I have heard it and I love it.
I love it too. I love it too.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this has been such an enlightening discussion. I love that this is our first long drawn conversation with each other because we got to go straight into the deep things and themes of life. And like this gives me so much life. So thank you so much for being here. I have two questions for you last. Um, First question is, what do you feel makes you a artist?
Oh, what makes me feel like an artist is that I finally feel like I can speak my truth. Like the masks have fallen off and I feel safe to express myself.
Mhm. Okay, I got chills. I got chills as you said, I can finally speak my truth. Because isn't that hard? Like just always just speaking what's true to us from moment to moment. And my next question is, where can people find you and how can they work with you if they'd like to?
Oh, goodness sakes. So, you can find me on Instagram. So my handle is M like Mary, J like Joe, V like Victory, Coast. I live on the Pacific Coast, so it's MJV Coast. And I actually have a website where I have all my details. And so I mean, people always say this to me. I truly believe I'm divinely guided. So my business is called Seraphim Self Care. So it's spelled SERAP like Paul, HIM like Mary. Self-care, no spaces, no capitals. So seraphimselfcare.com.
Perfect. I'll also add it in the podcast description. So for anybody that is looking for your work and looking to work with you, they will find it over there. Yeah, okay. I think that feels complete. I am so grateful. Thank you for choosing to sit with me and chat with me, and just thank you for bringing all the fire that you are and all the magic that you are and all the love that you are. I'm so grateful to witness you and to be here in this lifetime with you.
Karina, it is my absolute pleasure to walk the earth the same time you do. And I'm so honored that you asked me to be on your podcast. And I just look forward to getting to know you more for years and years to come.